Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crow Canyon Software's webinar on Nitro workflows in Microsoft Flow, Best Friends Forever. Some people are still joining, so we'll get going in a moment. Meanwhile, I'll put in some comments about the webinar. And one thing is that there is a question box in your console, I guess you call it. But, there's a place you can put in questions, and we'll try to answer them during the webinar as much as possible. If we don't get to them during the webinar, we'll have answers. We'll send answers out by email, perhaps do a blog post on it or whatever seems appropriate given what the questions are, and we'll be glad to address them. So we try and get to them during the webinar, maybe towards the end of it or in the middle if we can, but if not, then we'll do it at the end. And of course, you can always contact Crow Canyon at any time. Send an email to sales@crowcanyon.com or give us a call, and we'll have some contact information on that coming up. There will also be a recording of this webinar that will be available after the webinar takes place. So I think we're in a good place to get going right now. And we'll cover Nitro workflows, Nitro Studio workflows and custom actions, and we'll cover the relation and integration with Microsoft Flow. Okay, so let's get going. I am Scott Restivo, President and CEO of Crow Canyon Software. We've been in business 20 years, and we've been doing business applications on the Microsoft platforms for that length of time, ever since 1999, so it's 20 years now. And of course, we started with not with SharePoint because it wasn't out then, but as soon as SharePoint came out in the mid-2000s, we jumped on board with that, and of course, Office 365. So we have well over a dozen years of experience in the SharePoint space and Office 365, as well as 20 years overall with the Microsoft applications. And I personally was doing consulting in the IT world even before that. So in the Crow Canyon Software world, we have business applications, these out-of-box solutions that are used by organizations around the world. We have our NITRO Studio, our no-code application creation platform, and we have a number of custom projects we're doing that involve SharePoint and Office 365. As some of you may know, we have a number of business applications. There's IT help desk, asset management, customer support, facilities. These run in SharePoint on premises and also in Office 365. People use them sometimes individually like a help desk, or sometimes they'll combine help desk with asset management or work orders with equipment, all kinds of ways of solutions to common business problems. And here's another set of different kinds of requests and compliance and legal. So we cover a lot of ground of core business applications inside of the SharePoint and Office 365 space for people who want to optimize and make their businesses run more efficiently. We also have a number of custom solutions. I listed a few there. We also have a case study on our website. Of course, crowcanyon.com has a lot of information in itself, but there's places with case studies and blogs and all kinds of resources there. And some of the things we've done, such as a claims management for insurance or check vouchers, a quote generator, these kind of custom projects that people have and they want to do inside the SharePoint Office 365 world using the advantages of that collaboration platform. And so we do a number of custom solutions as well as the business applications. But today we're talking about the NITRO Studio. NITRO Studio came from our development of the applications. And we developed a layer that runs on top of SharePoint Office 365, an application creation platform, you might call it, where we found we needed to put forms, workflows, reporting, and other aspects. Lately, we've gone into modern UI and AI services to enhance SharePoint and Office 365. So it really provides a powerful business application creation platform. It's a set of enhancements for SharePoint and Office 365. Now, SharePoint, we saw on premises, is 2013, 2016, 2019. We've left 2010 behind, and now we're on 2013, 2016, 2019, and Office 365. The goal is quick development of flexible, easily deployed applications using NITRO Studio. You can build simple or complex ones, and it works in conjunction with the other SharePoint and Office 365 tools. And today we'll be discussing this in relation to particularly in relation to Flow, Microsoft Flow, and talk about that. So as I said, we looked at SharePoint and when we were building these applications, and we saw that it had quite a bit of number of capabilities, sites, lists, columns, integration with AD, a number of things that come out of the box with SharePoint. We found it needed more in order to build a true applications on top of SharePoint. So we developed this NITRO Studio. First, we developed our applications, then we realized that we were developing a platform that our applications run on. So we turn the Nitrous Studio into more of a product in and of itself with forms, portals, workflows, columns. And some of you may be familiar with that already, using it already, and that's great. And we keep enhancing it and improving it and making it even more useful. And we'll dive into some aspects of it today. Let me get all these up here. Okay. So one thing I want to point out and put this slide in is, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it because organizations want to run more efficiently. We want to help organizations be more productive, more efficient, increase their profits, or if you're a membership organization or government, to better serve your members or citizens or whatever. So in other words, to run things more efficiently. And the way technology is changing so fast, it's hard to keep up for any of us, but moving towards mobile, responsive, cloud-based, it's a very much more efficient and productive way to do things. And of course, there's always the tendency to stick with inefficient, outdated solutions, as we say, the devils you know versus the angels you haven't met. So, and it's hard sometimes for an organization to change from, they're used to using emails and spreadsheets or some legacy system or even paper form. They make enterprise software that's overboard and overkill or outdated. So people are looking to make these changes, and we're here to help them, us, and a number of, most of the people I talk to in the Microsoft community all have the same goal, all the way from the CEO at Microsoft all the way down to through the organization and into third-party vendors like us. It's all to help organizations run more efficiently, move away from inefficient, outdated solutions. So we're all working towards that same goal. Now, one thing, I talked about legacy systems here, Lotus Notes, Access Forms, but I can't go through this webinar without mentioning replacing InfoPath forms, because that's one of our big themes lately. Is it's time to get off InfoPath. Microsoft said that over a year, in fact, almost a year ago today, if you look at that, April 30th, 2018. But anyways, so at least a year or longer, they've been saying, hey, it's time to move off, and here's why: it's outdated technology, not mobile friendly and clunky, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a whole bunch of information on our website again about that. That's not what this webinar is about. We have done other webinars about InfoPath forms replacement. We will do others. We are working on several large projects in that world. And it's quite an interesting world. I did want to mention that that's one of the legacy systems people are really starting to pay attention seriously to moving off of into other solutions such as our Nitrous Studio. So here is our Nitrous Studio, kind of a graphical representation that we have built on top of SharePoint Office 365. There's this layer or application creation platform, whatever you want to call it, focusing on these areas of UI, UX, workflows and processes, and reporting and analytics. And from that, you can build, well, we build our applications. Well, you can build your own using the studio, or you can do custom development, or we can do custom development. So let's go into the, break it down a little bit here on a Nitrous Studio. And here's what I look at as this, what I call the 3 pillars of application design, or the 3 elements. So Nitrous Studio, we look at as a comprehensive application creation platform, because we've been doing this for so many years that in developing and marketing and selling and supporting so many applications of different kinds, that this is where we come from, is that we're down in the trenches building these things, and we know what they need. And the first thing that we looked at when we look at it, this is UI, UX, engage and empower users. If your users or customers or members or citizens, whatever, are not using the application, it isn't friendly to them, it isn't intuitive, it isn't whatever the latest, say mobile friendly, it's come up a lot lately, or there's a portal or something, people aren't going to use it. So that's a very important part of the whole application creation scheme. The middle part is really the heart of it, is where they're streamlining and automating processes using the elements of the Nitrous Studio. And then at the end, we want to remember to get reporting and analytics to look back and say, how can we drive a continuous cycle of improvement in our application? So when we talk about Nitrous Studio or our Crow Canyon business applications, we're looking at it from this full-fledged perspective of engaging, empower users, of streamlining and automating processes, and driving continuous improvement. And here it is in a little bit more detail, where we have with the engaging, the UI, UX, engage and empower users, we have dynamic forms, columns, we're mobile friendly, application portals, brand. We're also moving into other things like chatbots and AI services, whatever we need to do to bring into the mix to make this engaging, empowering applications. The workflow and business processes, where we're streamlining and automating. We have we have a workflow manager, custom actions, we have approval process, alert, routing, database integration, email sync, many other things. And that's what we'll focus on in this webinar, in some demos that'll come up shortly. And then there's reporting to drive continuous cycle of improvement by reporting and dashboards and charts and tables that give you statistics. So you look back and say, where are the bottlenecks, or where are the slowdowns, what's taking the most time, and how can we improve the process? So I'm presenting this slide as Nitrous Studio being a comprehensive solution, a comprehensive application creation platform for SharePoint and Office 365. Now, given that, we are now going to move in more into talking about Flow, and then we'll get into some demos and show you some cool stuff we're doing with NITRO Studio and integration with Flow. First, I wanted to bring up a poll. Hope you don't mind if I can ask a few questions about, 2 questions really. One is about what workflow tools you are now using. So we have some sense of where people are at. I believe it's putting the poll out right now, giving you some choices of, is it distributing, collecting responses? Okay, here we go. So some are using like the native SharePoint things, and okay, you can have multiple answers on those too. So we'll just let that run for another 10 or 20 seconds here or something, and see where that goes. Okay. Seems like I see most people voted, so I'll close that for the moment. I think everybody give 1 or 2 seconds. I think we're good. All right, I'll close that poll and show the results in a moment. Let's see, share the results, and we're going to see that. Oh, that didn't allow multiple choices. I thought I set it up to allow multiple choices. Sorry if I didn't. Oh well. When I set up the poll. Anyway, so what I found is most people are, maybe 2/3 or more or less are using SharePoint Designer, Workflows, InfoPath. So yeah, so definitely it's a good conversation to have with us to move off of that and how you can implement the processes in more modern ways. Some people are using Flow, only about 15%, and 15% Nitrous Studio, and a few are on Nintek. Okay, then if for the people on Flow, I'll put up this other poll though. It seems like there are not so many people using Flow, but I'll see if anybody is real familiar or real advanced with it. And it just gives you a range of little to no experience, beginner, and how many people are advanced on it. Maybe there's some MVPs on this webinar who are advanced in Flow here, who knows? They can correct me. They can write me emails later today about what I did or didn't say right about Flow. So it's always good to have people like that on board. Okay, good. So let's close that out, and good. That's enough for the polls, and I'll share that with people. Most people are very new to Flow, because I guess if you're using the SharePoint designers and work and those kind of things, you haven't quite made the, started work on Flow yet. So let me hide that and go back. To talking about Flow now. Let's go. Okay, so the next slide is about Flow. Here, come on, Flow. Share, hide, manage. There we go. Okay, there's tons of information on Flow up on the web, Microsoft site, and other places. So don't worry about that. Just short introduction, cloud-based service used to automate business processes, et cetera, et cetera. So now Microsoft puts out Flow as a very useful tool, and there's a lot of information and examples on it, and that's good. But I wanted to bring up some of the considerations that have to be taken in effect when we use Flow. So I'm bringing these in, and we're going to take a moment here to look at some of the things you might want to consider when you're bringing Flow into the mix. Now, one person in the questions just mentioned number 4 down here, so you'd like start at 1, but I'll start with this. Yeah, Flow is a cloud-based service that's not available if you're using SharePoint on-premises, so it's not even a consideration in that point. Now, there is something called the on-premises data gateway. If you're in, you have to have Flow as a cloud-based service, maybe in Office 365 or whatever, but if you don't have that, you can't use the on-premises data gateway because you have to have something to connect to. So if you're totally in the on-premises, SharePoint on-premises, and a lot of people are due to security or regulatory reason, then your Flow is not going to work out, and that makes a strong case for using Nitrous Studio because we work fully in SharePoint 2013, 2016, and 2019. Okay, I'll start it back up here in the upper left. Flow is free to a certain point. That's what I want to say here. It's not free forever. You know, there is here's the plans. You can look this up yourself on the Flow pricing. There are different plans here. See, and now what you're looking into is free up to a certain number of runs. And there's this 15-minute check. Well, if you have to go to plan one, $5 per user per month. It's not cheap. That adds up, $15 per user per month. And then you start to get more runs and the sooner checks and premium connectors. So there is something to consider there. I'm not saying I have all the answers here, but you know, there are complexities and considerations with the Flow plans. This is something that you get Flow free, then there's Flow comes with Office 365. Most of the Office 365 enterprise level, like E3s and whatnot, have Flow in it, so you can go up to a certain amount, but still it's only 2,000 per user per month and 5 minutes runtime. It doesn't have the premium connectors down here, so you have to go up to the plan one, plan two. So I just want to throw that in there. I don't say I have all the answers on the I don't think anyone does on the Flow licensing, because it is kind of complex and there's a lot of different things. And like people say to us, well, you know, Scott, we really don't even know what we're going to need or how many or whatever. So we decided to price NITRO Studio differently, which is that once you get on board with it and you're paying the price per user, which is at the most about $2 per user per month, it goes down when you use volume from that price of $2 per user per month. And then we don't worry about how many workflows and actions and everything you run. We're not counting them. I mean, it just seemed like a better model all over, because people have come to us and, you know, as we said, we've done applications for many years, and they've said, we don't know how many things we're going to run. We don't know. How do we know? You know, and so what are we going to do? Bump into plan one, plan two, then have to go down here. Was it by? You can add for every, you know, $40 a month for. I mean, this gets the pricing becomes uncertain. Now, that is a consideration. I'm not saying it's a limit. It's not saying don't use Flow. I'm saying it's a consideration. And there's something else that someone brought up when I was reading through the FAQs here. Certain flow here, why do I run out of flows when my flow only ran a few times? Well, certain flows may run more frequently than you expect. For example, you may create a flow that sends you a push notification whenever your manager sends you an email. Well, that flow runs every time you get an email. Well, think about, you know, even 750 runs a month is only 25 a day. Everybody gets more than 25 emails a day, right? The flow must check whether the mail came from your manager's counts as a run. Well, there is a workaround where you could do filtering and all that, push notifications, and to, you know, so you don't run on every, you know, in the advanced options, you can do a filter that says only run it when the manager's email address is in the front field. But there's ways around it. In other words, it's a consideration to think about if you're going to use Flow, and I want to bring that up. The next question in my diagram here of the PowerPoint, wherever it is, was the complexity of learning and using Flow. Now, all of us have different skills, different abilities as to what we can and want to learn or have ability to learn, but you know, it's interesting to consider this statement from Microsoft that the intended audience is line of business citizen integrators partnering with IT. Okay, the point they're trying to make here is that they're trying to push the low code, no code down the pipe a little to your so-called citizen developers who aren't trained, don't have a degree in, you know, computer science from, you know, Cal Poly or something like that. You know, so they want to push it to more of the so-called citizen developers. That's good, but then I started looking around the web and seeing what people are doing with Flow. So here we go, looking at, I just picked a few of these out by random, really, and started thinking about what people are doing and how they're making Flow work. So here's an example from this person, and she just wants to do these three things. And she's got all this going on. It's like a Word document going on. Then you got to get this. Then you have to have Flow. Then you have to have triggers. Then you have to have forms. Then you have to have, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, I was so surprised when I was looking at all this Twitter, and then she's got Planner and post a tweet and said, this is not simple. You know what I'm saying? And our expression here at Crow Canyon is, well, you don't have to be a developer, but it sure helps, right? So same with trigger or flow with a button click on SharePoint Online. Here we go. He's only trying to do this thing right here. It looks simple, but then there's all this complications going on here. You know, you would start writing some code and doing JSON and doing all this and then doing all these things and more code and yada, yada, yada. That seems to go against Microsoft's goal there, pushing this to the citizen developer. And now John Liu good stuff he has, a lot of great stuff if you're into flow and development, you know, into kind of programmer model. Good stuff, cheat sheet. But look, I mean, this is stuff that goes on here. You know, this is not as simple. And I was surprised myself when I started looking at this, how much is involved in just doing, you know, relatively simple stuff. I will show you how to trigger Microsoft Flow with a button click, like as they say, in 2 seconds. You know, I mean, very quickly using our custom actions. And I'll get that in a moment as soon as I'm done going through our considerations of Microsoft Flow, and I'm almost done with that, so hold on. So we talked about the licensing costs, the limits on runs, and limits on users. We had the complexity of learning Flow and using Flow. And it's debatable. I know some people will debate me on that, but from what I've seen and talked to people and talked to MVPs and people at shows, it's not as simple as Microsoft makes it out. It's hard to believe an ordinary citizen, inexperienced with you know, coding and JavaScript, would have more than very basic capabilities in Flow. And the other point I want to make is Nitrous Studio, by comparison, is a complete application creation platform for SharePoint and Office 365. We created Nitrous Studio for the express purpose of building applications inside of SharePoint and Office 365. We made it easy for people to do with friendly interfaces and simple things, and cutting out all the stuff you don't need. Flow was made more for connecting many different disparate systems together. So it functions in Dynamics, it functions in SharePoint, it functions in all these different places. So they had to build much more than is needed for what we need inside of Nitrous Studio. In Nitrous Studio, we use it to build our applications, and we wanted our users to have simple, intuitive, friendly ways to modify their workflows or their actions. And also, as I say, it's a complete application creation platform, including, like I said earlier, the UI UX, the workflows, and the reporting. So that's a point I want to make. Not to say don't use Flow. It doesn't have a lot to it, but there are some considerations or cautions there to consider. Now, Flow is a cloud-based service. I already mentioned that, and not available to people on premises. Now let's look at this, how we look at it in our perspective here. Again, debatable, but what we say here is that if you're going to build an application running inside of SharePoint and Office 365, Nitrous Studio is spot on the tool to use. There's no question from our perspective that it has all the capabilities that are necessary to do that, to build a request management or a service request or a help desk or anything like that. And then at the same time, because as we said at the beginning, we're best friends forever, you bring some Flow in if you want. It's not mutually exclusive. You can use Flow either just independently of Nitrous Studio, or within our custom actions, as I'll show in a little bit, you can invoke a Flow from inside of our actions. And the places that we're finding that Flow has the most usefulness, and there's no doubt about that, is that in the connection to outside systems, like Salesforce, Twitter, Dropbox, many others. There's a whole list of them out there that are external to SharePoint. So the basic point is, if you're building that, most of the heart of the application you build inside of SharePoint and Office 365 to do your request management, replace your info path form, to do the hardware request, or the request for leave, or the purchase orders, or whatever, all inside of SharePoint and Office 365. You throw a Flow in here and there if you want, but then Flow also comes in usefulness hand in hand with Nitrous Studio when you want to connect to an outside system. And it has a number of connectors. In fact, we even build some connectors, Flow connectors too. So that would be a way, we would present a way to use the two together. It depends on your level of expertise or experience. And again, you don't even have to use Flow at all if you don't want to. That's another consideration, to be quite frank about it. All right, so let's jump into some demos. I always like demos better than all this talk, but I just want to present that. Make the case. People can put up all the questions they want. I don't have time to do it while I'm talking, but I'll try and answer them right after this, and hopefully it stimulates some debate on all this we're talking about here. Okay, so let me get out of this and go over to some demos and show you some cool stuff we're doing here inside of Nitrous Studio. Okay, so I'm gonna go over to the access request system we have here. We have an access. This is a system I put together during an earlier demo when I was demonstrating the Nitro Forms tools. And so it's, it's a pretty basic program going on here about access requests. We're opening up a new item here, and we're looking at an access request system. This is built in the Nitro Forms, and these can be modern UI friendly with responsive, or they could be dynamic, all kinds of I'm not going to go too into the forms tool here because otherwise that would be the whole webinar would be on that and not on the workflows and custom action. But just to point out a few things here about these forms. When you choose it's dynamic, so you choose a database of SQL, it's going to open up a whole section here, dynamic forms, and then you could start to build other kind of dynamic or get the information you want. Anyway, set forms, interested in forms, love to show you a whole long demo on it. Just briefly click over to the forms tool we have here, the Forms Designer, NITRO Forms Designer. Many things going on here as to how you can design this form with the different controls and layouts and themes and colors and advanced features and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's a really cool forms designer. We're really having a lot of fun with it. But one thing you can do in the form is put in different actions, these different kinds of actions. So on the form itself, this is why I say NITRO is an application creation comprehensive. It's now where the forms and the buttons and the actions are working together here. So we have this form already at the bottom. You can see there's submit for approval, save, cancel. These are running some custom actions that we created. You can take a custom action and stick it somewhere up here if you wanted, and then have that button available in different display forms of the form, and that button would run in one of our custom actions, which are created in our custom action tool here. And so let me go through that and go to our custom action tool here. Now this is the NITRO Studio. That's for the access request system. Backend, this is what backs it up. So it gives it the power with the forms, the workflows, the reports, and all this. For one of the things is custom actions. Let's go to custom actions here. So for custom actions for the access request list right here, we're adding custom actions. Now you saw in that list I showed you on the forms, a few of these here are here already. So what we have going on is, escalate action, assign, different save attachment to OneDrive. I'll show you that in a moment. These are actions that have various components. So let's look at escalate. We created this escalate action. Escalate action can be whatever you want escalate to be. In this case, escalation is set priority to high and send an email to James, assuming James is the manager. We're going to send, hey, this has not been taken care of. We need to escalate it, and perhaps we could add on another action of reassigning it to somebody or resetting the due date or whatever. So that means that when I open this form right here, I can see here whether I put the button on the form itself or it's up here in the list ribbon. I can go here and escalate this by pressing, and it'll run those actions that we define, whatever those actions are. It's also in what they call the ECB, edit control block here, escalate right here. And you can also have it up in the list ribbon here if you wanted to. I don't know if it's showing up here, but it would. Well, we can have it show up there if we wanted to. Oh no, it's under items right here. Yeah, escalate right here. So all kinds of different places that you have choices when you're creating the custom action of where it's going to show, and that's set up in the custom action right here. It's going to show up in the NITRO form, display form, the ECB, or the list view ribbon. And this escalate action, you put a tooltip on it, change the icon, you can set what sequence it is in the ribbons, you have a confirmation message. And this is all the custom actions that are done. Nice, friendly, intuitive interface. And then you can also have conditions to say, only show the escalate action to someone in a group who's maybe I don't know, a manager or a staff executive or something like that, or only when certain conditions are met. Maybe when the due date's exceeded, that's the only time you want to have it show up as an escalate button. So you have various options here of when you're going to show is greater than, equal, whatever. I won't put that in right now, but the point is that you can have the buttons show up only under certain conditions. Lots of control of what you can do. And then you could add on another one to set the priority, to escalate it. It could be to reassign it to somebody else, or move it to group 2 and send it to group, level 2 support or whatever you wanted to do here. So there's a list of actions that you can implement, any number of these, within the custom action screen here. You can add a list item with useful for creating subtasks, update it, which is what we're doing here by setting the priority to high. And most people don't delete a list item, but you could upload, generate documents, send an email, execute a script, invoke a web service, invoke a workflow, query list, or invoke another custom action. So we give you a large range of easily accessible actions that you can do in order to build your workflow. Now let's go ahead and create another custom action from scratch here. and we're going to do this. We're going to generate a document. We're going to generate a document that would be either saved in a document library or attached to the item. Come back. And again, we can decide where we're going to put it, or if we want a confirmation message. I won't go into that right now. What conditions it runs under, you know, who can generate the document, who can't. So let's go here to new action, generate document. This is click, click, click. We're getting it done, right? So here we go, generate a document. Generate, I don't know, it's generate access request a certificate. Let's just call it that. Why not? Okay, generate access request. You can also do individual conditions on that action. So if you had multiple actions, you can decide which ones run under what condition. Really good stuff. And you can use a Word template to generate this document, or a list item template. I'm going to use this one right here, which I know about. And where we're going to save this, we can either save it as an attachment on the current item, or save it to a document library if we wanted here in our, you know, if we wanted to save it to a document library, we could have it right there, saved to this document library. Where is it called act? But I'm gonna save it as an item on the current, whether it's a PDF, a Word, and give it a name, certificate of access. You know, and then I can put in some placeholders like for whoever's requested, but I'll just put it like that for now. And then we're going to reload the display form after we do it, save it. We now have an action, a lot of options here, so you can really tune it up to where you want to do with this. So now we have one called generate document. Okay, so we're going to go back here. We're going to open this up in display mode. Here we go. And now there's one up here called generate document that wasn't there before. There are no attachment to this, so let's generate a document. Okay, it's going to attach it to this item. And there we go, close it, and you know, refresh. It should refresh itself. And we should have, there it goes, reloading, because we set it to reload, and there should be an attachment on this now. Yep, certificate of access is right here. We just generated that with the custom action. And there we go, right? And that is that template can be done any way you want. With we have HTML ability to do the template. It's really cool. You can make up a really cool looking purchase order or an invoice, whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's a custom action that is called generate document, and we generated this and attached it. Now we could just as well have saved it in the document library. But what we want to do here is one step further. And here's where I'm going to bring the flow in. So here's where we have to pay attention and look at what we're doing. Okay, let me go over here and show that directory. Where is it? Where is that directory? Where it is? Oh, here it is, flow requests right here. This is a OneDrive, see OneDrive right here? OneDrive directory called flow requests. So I open it up here. Nothing in it, right? Nothing in here. This is in the SharePoint system, flow requests, OneDrive directory. So we're going to go back. I'm going to move this over to the other screen. Go back here to the access request system, which is over here. And then we're going to open this one up. Now we know it has an attachment because we just added it to it, right? We just added the attachment. So what we want to do is save the attachment to OneDrive. Now here's where we're using a custom action to trigger a flow. It's so simple. This other guy's writing all this JSON and whatnot and JavaScript. All we did is go to custom actions. Let me show you here before I run it. There's one called Save Attachments to OneDrive. And what we're doing here is the action is invoke workflow. And the workflow we're invoking is a Microsoft flow. So here we go. We also can invoke a SharePoint flow. We can invoke a Crow Canyon flow, workflow, but in this case, we're invoking a Microsoft flow. Simple. And the cool thing is you can have your button show up where you want. You can put different icons on it. You can have different sequence in the form or the ECB. You have a confirmation message, all kinds of cool stuff. So now, you know, keeping it simple, we have it right here, save attachments to OneDrive. We have the attachment down here. As I said, there's nothing in this folder right now, right? Flow request. So we're going to save attachments to OneDrive. And here's where we go. There it goes. Oh, that was quick. So let's go over here to this and refresh. And here we go. We have now saved it. We have now used Nitro Studio custom actions, making a simple button with none of that complex code or anything, to put a button on your form that will then save this to OneDrive, or it could save it anywhere. I mean, if whatever flow you want to run, right? It could run a flow that saves something to Salesforce or Twitter or whatever. So see, they're best friends forever. I mean, that's our hope. Sounds ridiculous, I know, but hey, it's marketing. So best friends forever, Microsoft Flow and Nitro. I mean, there's no conflict there. It's like, we're friends, right? So Flow, we want to do a Flow thing. Now we're finding a lot of use for this in our applications when, as I said earlier, we're connecting to external systems. One could be doing something in Active Directory. It could be doing something in Salesforce. It really depends on what application you're running. So if Flow, if nothing else, helps extend what Nitro Studio can do. Here we put this right here. We did this, save this attachment here, certificate of access. Maybe there has to be some compliance thing where you have to know who gave access when, and that person doesn't have access to your SharePoint, so you want to push it out to a Dropbox or OneDrive or some kind of shared place where people who are not necessarily in the SharePoint application can access it and say, this guy was granted, or this woman was granted access on this day by so-and-so. And that helps you meet auditing requirements, right? So where are we? Close this, close that, and you now have that going on there. We have that access there, and that's pretty cool use of Flow. Now you could just as well do the same thing with Nitro workflows, where you say, okay, when this item is marked complete or some other status change, whatever you want, then invoke that flow, invoke that Microsoft Flow to go ahead and move it, do whatever you want, whatever the flow is supposed to do. Do it based on a trigger inside the Nitro workflows there. So let's look at that. I mean, we have here in our Nitro Studio, we've been focusing a lot on the custom actions, because I think I was looking at that trigger a flow from a SharePoint button and thinking, man, that's awfully darn complicated compared to what we can do in Nitro Studio, because then you just do it, you just have a button. I mean, 2 seconds, like I said, right? So then let's look at this workflow here, and the same idea, that will come up in a moment. And same idea where if you status changes, you can run that flow to do whatever you want the flow to do. And like I said, really good for connecting to these external systems there. And that's what's important. So let's look at Nitro. It's loading. Okay. So saying here on the access request system, we have generated, we added a new custom action. We added a new ability to use a button to connect to launch or invoke a flow that can do that. Many other things you can do in your custom actions here that make it happen. Let's go to this one that I just did, save attachments to OneDrive, and we'll put a confirmation message on here. Are you sure you want to save attachments to OneDrive for the selected items, or put your own one in here? Are you, oh, what the heck happened there? Come back. Are you sure you want to save the, by the way, this will work for multiple attachments too. Attachment to OneDrive. Okay, and put it there, yes, confirmation, like that. Okay, so that changes that. I could add a condition on here for only certain people could do it, that kind of thing. I could add on another one that says send an email out to the people to say, we have just uploaded a document to OneDrive. They give you a notice there that you just uploaded it. Added on a new action here of send email. Action be notify client or whatever, I don't know. And then it'd be from Crow Canyon here and to whoever we want to send it to. Maybe an email address, put my email address in. And I'm the client, I guess. So then we use a mail template, send request PDF, and we include the items attachments if we want or not. And we could dress up this template in many different ways. I was looking at the Microsoft Flow emails and templates, and it seemed like kind of cumbersome to make it look real nice like we do here. We have all the rich text formatting in here, including the ability to add HTML in there and bolding and all that, you know, and then this would access to, you know, and whatever, you know, type of access. In other words, there's so much you can do depending on your imagination. Well, really not imagination, but more what you need in your application is the important thing here. We're using placeholders like application request certification for this person, access request to follow systems has been granted, see attached PDF for detail. And then we put in any kind of placeholders we want here to make this a really useful email, a really useful engine, a really useful email to go out to people to you know that there was this custom action going on here. Let's see, did I get that? So, okay. So now we have notify client. So send to OneDrive and notify the client by sending an email that there's a new there. And you probably could put in it with the right links and stuff, a link to that OneDrive directory or something. You guys know more about that OneDrive stuff. Can put in a link and then have right there in the email, and that email would go out when the document is generated there. So we go save that and go here. And where were we? We were in the flow, we're in the flow, I like that. So here it is. Let me delete this one. Now, I can also say you can give it a unique name based on parameters from your access request. So let's go back to the access request. Flow request is now empty. You know, let's reload just to be sure. And do it again. So here we go, access, you know, so you can modify your custom action so easily without any coding, no code, and say, okay, let's do that again. Save attachments to OneDrive. And now it's gonna probably ask me a confirmation message if I say, yeah, sure you want to save attachments to OneDrive? Yeah, sure, I do. So I send the OneDrive and I'm gonna notify the client at the same time now. Send that out and close. And it's reloading. Let's go back to the flow request folder. There it is again. A few seconds ago, I did delete it. This is the second time it's being put here. And again, if I was doing this, I'd put a little bit of extension on there so that it had a different name. Or you can even do stuff like folders. You know, part of Flow could create a folder in OneDrive for maybe the name of the requester or the type of access or the date or whatever you want to do. So you can actually build up a folder system in here using Flow also to do that. So that when you do OneDrive, you take parameters from the NITRO item, and then you go and create the folder based on that. And, you know, I mean, all kinds of cool stuff that can go on with that. I wonder if I got an email. My email's not open, but I'll check that in a moment. I'm sorry if I'm not getting the answers because I just, you know, I'm so into the flow of this, I guess, of this webinar that I'm not really looking at that. But we'll get stuff going on that. The answering, you know, once I'm done with this, and it's got about 10 or 15 more minutes to go through here. But I did want to show you, get out, let's say that. Then we're going over to workflows now. So here's the workflows. We're in the access request list. And here's an item is added to it, and we're going to look at that, or we could create a new workflow, but let's go here and look at this action that's already created. I see there's a lot of questions, and I'm anxious to get to them, but I do have to, I want to show this workflow thing here. This is our own workflow engine that we wrote. It's our own system, and so we put in all these different triggers. Whole idea with workflows is there's triggers, conditions, and actions. The triggers here are items created, modified, deleted. It's based on a date-time field, such as due date or contract expiration or whatever. And there's also the schedule. You can do it on absolute time to say every first of the week, for every Monday at 6 a.m. or something, you want to run this workflow. And then what are the conditions? Well, the conditions will run when there's certain conditions are met in the system. And I don't know why this is slow, and I apologize for that. It must be something with, I'm giving demos and things slow down. I don't know. But then there's certain actions that are associated with this. Here we go, good. Well, yeah, it did take a moment. So here's all the different triggers. Items created, it's very common. Modified, you know, status changes or something changes, deleted, scheduled, and you can decide what conditions. This is where the category is equal to database. So when someone chooses category database on that access request form, it's going to send an email out to staff. Now here's all the actions that can happen inside of our workflow manager automatically. The difference is this. The difference is this. And let me see if I have that slide. I can show you that slide here. Okay. Unhide it and show it. Let's see. It's whatever. So here we go. Workflow manager, the triggers are based on certain system events like items created, modified, deleted, or at the time, or scheduled to run at set times. And the conditions are any combination of values on the form. So such as category equals this, or priority equals that, or requester equals this, and any combination could be all 3, 4, 5. And then all these different actions can happen. So the point with the workflow manager, our workflow manager, is that it is system or event driven, as opposed to the custom actions we were just looking at, which is that the triggers are based on a button on, so someone's going to press a button, or you're going to run it from another, you're going to invoke it from another custom action. But there's links and buttons that run it. So this is like user initiated, and it could be based on any combination of values on the form, and it can be based on the user or a group, and all these different actions run. So just put that out there as to two different ways of running actions or workflows. This workflow we're looking at right now is the workflow manager that are running on system or events of so if I change the status to complete, it could run this workflow, and then whatever it is, it could send an email, it could update something, it could create subtasks, it could invoke a flow, a Microsoft flow. Let's look at that invoke. So it's talking about Microsoft flow. Let's talk about it again here. So here we go, Microsoft flow. We could initiate a flow right here. We also have this legacy thing where you can run a SharePoint workflow if you wanted, if you already have one going, you can invoke it. So the Microsoft flow would run here automatically based on the status change, or it could be based on a certain timer or whatever the flow you want done. So see, it's integrated together. The flow, Microsoft flow, and our workflow and our custom action tools are all integrated together. So this one right here, this particular workflow, is notifying staff when there's a new database access request, and it's just going to notify somebody sending an email that there's been a new database request that came in. So that's what happens here. If you choose that field, it's going to notify whoever is meant to be notified with that mail template on the request form. So if you change your category to database, that's going to kick off that right there. And SQL, you know, and there's a lot more to this form, and I did go through in a previous webinar where if there's a manager and SQL, it goes over to certain approval processes and different things like that. And you know, there's really not enough time to go through all that right here. But I encourage anybody, any of you, to get in touch with us, see what the cool stuff we're doing. We're at all these shows. In fact, I'm going to DC next week for the DC Fest. I hope to see some of you there. And Vegas, baby. Yeah, Vegas in middle of May 21, 22, 23, a big booth, 10 by 20 booth there. We're going to be there, and just come up and talk to us and tell us what you're doing, what's going on. And you saw us at the webinar and you thought what I said was great, or you thought it was really needed some correct. I don't know, whatever. Just let's, you know, get a chat going here on this subject, because this is what we do all night and day, literally, quite literally, night and day, is build applications for SharePoint and Office 365. And we have all due respect to Microsoft and Flow, great tool, but we feel that our NITRO Studio is what you should use for doing the internal inside of SharePoint work of an application, due to this comprehensive suite of tools and our deep experience with it, as well as it works on premises, whereas Flow doesn't. But at the same time, you can incorporate all the Flow you want into it if that's your thing and your experience with it, and why not? And you can see that we are very much work and integrate. And one other aspect of it is that we are just about to finish a Flow connector, where the Flow connector will run one of these workflows you create in here. It would actually run the workflow, the NITRO Studio workflow from a Flow. So it's like the other way around, you know, vice versa, like coming from the other perspective. A lot of cool stuff we're doing, making Flow and NITRO Studio best friends, BFF, best friends forever. Corny as that sounds, it is really what our goal is to not have any conflict with Flow, but to use it to whatever achieves the goal that we're trying to achieve, which is, as I stated earlier, to help you run your business, your organization more productively, efficiently, move off all outdated, inefficient solutions. And that's what we enjoy doing. And we try and keep the cost down. We try and keep things very reasonable. And a lot of people are jumping on board with Nitro these days. They're getting off Nitro InfoPath forms or other legacy, Lotus Notes or something, Access forms, and they're seeing that this is a very, very good solution. Now, I went 50 minutes going on. I'll go look at questions right now, but I also just want to emphasize one thing. Get in touch, get a trial, see what's going on. This is cool stuff. This is exciting things. There's so much more to Nitro Studio. We got AI services and chatbots. We're totally invested in the modern UI. I give a whole webinar on that. And so, you know, we could do that again. Modern UI components on here. We just came out with that, a whole list of them. And, you know, we're on it. We're on it. And hopefully you'll, you know, find a reason to get in touch with us and talk to us about it. So let me look at some of the questions so that I can try and answer those before the hour runs out. Where'd that go? That question box was right here. So that we can proceed here. So I got to find the question box wherever it went behind my screen. Sorry, it's here somewhere. Questions. Jocelyn, you there? Do you have some questions? Or, oh, you're as an attendee. Okay. Somehow the question, oh, here it is. It's at the top. Okay. Sometimes that GoToWebinar screen's a little tricky to figure out. So I can pull out the question box and try and answer some of these questions. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Okay. Where do custom actions show in modern look? Good question. Okay, custom actions show on the screen. They show, let's see, this is the modern look right here. Let's see. No, that's not the modern look. We do have the modern look here, though, on one of these. Oh, I think it's over here on my other screen. I'll show that right here. On this ITP Nitro one here is kind of a test environment, or, you know, environment right here. And this is loading, I believe, the modern version of the Nitro forms in here. So here you have it right here. See this? This is like a modern view of our Nitro forms. Our Nitro forms work in classic or modern. Then this is a modern one, and you can see that the buttons are right here in the so-called list ribbon right here. So there they are. Of course, you could show, you know, this is a test environment, so we added everything in its brother here. So we could make that shorter and expand. You can also expand the size of the form to accommodate a larger screen space. And the most important thing with this is that it is should be at least responsive. See how it's going down, you know, with the screen size. So that's an important part of the modern UI, is that this screen, and then you have this, you know, right there, right? That's a big thing about the modern. So we have a number of web parts, and I could go into a whole riff on the modern UI and how you can develop portals and web pages using. We have like 16 different web parts for the modern UI. And let me get that web page just quickly, just to toot our own horn a little here, and go to the, Jocelyn knows where this is. It's under Resources, Services. Well, here it is, Modern UI, right under Nitrous Studio. We have a list there of Modern UI web parts. And here's all the things we're doing with Modern UI web parts. So a lot of stuff we're doing to make the Modern UI, you know, to accommodate the Modern UI. Good. One of these on Power Apps integration. Yeah, that would be a nice another one to do. You know, Nitro Studio and Power Apps and how they work together. The issue with Power Apps really is that, you know, really there can only be one form on a list. I mean, I'm either using Power Apps or Nitro is the way. I mean, I got to research that a little more, but that's my understanding of it. I mean, I know that in our Nitro Studio, you can have multiple forms on one list. So maybe you can have a Power Apps form and a Nitro, I don't know. A good question though, and we should explore that. Let's see, when you attach an image, specify to save the image to a picture library without having to create a workflow. So if you have an image, a PDF, I mean a JPEG or something like that, you could save it to a picture library without having to create a workflow. Yeah, basically you wouldn't have to create a workflow. You would go to custom actions, save attachment. You would save the attachment to a document library is what you would do from your here. I showed you saving to OneDrive because OneDrive is an external system, and I wanted to show the capabilities of using Flow to move it out to a external system from SharePoint. Whereas if you're saving it, like say in the documents library right here, or folder in the documents library, you could do that internally using custom actions to save the attachment over here into a document library right there. So you would save the file from the attachment into there, or maybe you have Word or emails with attachments and things like that. Somebody else pointed out they can't use Flow because they're on premises, so Nitrous Studio is a great solution. Some other things are about a workflow, about a calendar meeting. So I think we're good. I think we're good on that. Questions, I'll answer more of those when I get a chance to really focus on what the question's about, and maybe talk individually with the person asking it, and we'll go from there. So I hope we're coming up on the hour, and we'll respect people's time. So hopefully this has been useful demonstration of NITRO Studio, specifically the workflows and custom actions, and what Crow Canyon's doing to help organizations be more productive and run more efficient modern solutions, and how we integrate in our best buddies with Flow, Microsoft Flow. I mean, it's something that we're staying very close with the community of Flow. We talk to the people, we go to the shows, so we know what Flow's up to, and impressed with what it can do and how we can integrate with it and use both to the best advantages for successful application deployment and creation. So I thank everyone for joining, and feel free to contact us anytime. Let me get up that slide to show the contact us stuff here. My marketing people will not let me get away with not showing that. So let me go from current slide. There we go. And then I'll leave that up for a few minutes. And of course, get all the information in. Great Twitter. We have a great Twitter feed. Follow us on Twitter. We have blog. The blog is, we're writing some really interesting articles, I think, that are very address hopefully your concerns. If you have a subject you want us to write about or information, let us know. We're producing white papers, infographics. We have another webinar coming up on EOC compliance if you're in the healthcare world. EOC is an environment of care, some hospital specialty, but if you're in healthcare, you know what I'm talking about. And we have another, we're pretty busy in May with the DC Fest and then the Vegas, but we'll have another webinars coming up throughout the summer, showcasing our applications and showcasing more of our Nitrous Studio as we come out with more and more elements, especially like the AI and modern UI and other parts of it. So thank you all for attending. I appreciate your taking the time out of your day to do it, and hopefully hear from you soon. So have a good day then. And here's our contact info up there on the screen.